Erev Shabbos. Thank you very, very much, Sadik. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. You should just know, Chili, I just want you to know. Be'ez Hashem, I think I mentioned this before, when it always happens at some point in the middle of Ma'ariv tonight, Be'ez Hashem, davening Ma'ariv, in Rosh Shemona Esrei, and I'm by the part, like Kenu B'Lakei V'Seinu, Ritzev M'Nuchaseinu, and then I take a deep breath in. I'm absolutely honest. I take a deep breath in. Shabbos. I feel Shabbos at that point. I'm telling you. I always say it. And B'li Neder, that loud Geshmak of good Shabbos, Rabbi Zakheim, I'm going to try to think about that tonight. Because it's Geshmak. It's Geshmak. No, it's Geshmak. Don't think it doesn't have an effect on me. It has a big effect. I'm a big believer in the Torah. In the Torah, it says, in Mesechus Brachos, it says, near the end of Mesechus Brachos, it says, I mentioned this, I think 2 weeks ago, I mentioned something similar, that if one goes over to greet his fellow, and he says Shalom Aleichem to him, the person doesn't respond, Chas v'Shalom Aleichem Shalom, so it's an Aveir, he's stealing from him. It's like stealing from a poor person, the Gemara says. It's stealing from him. Which means that every time you say Shalom Aleichem, I'm giving you a bracha netano, and when you say Aleichem Shalom back to me, you're giving me a bracha back. And you say Good Shabbos to me, it means something. Moshe, I often say good morning to people. Good morning. So somebody once said good morning to me. So I asked them, once only, but I asked them, what do you mean by that? When you say good morning, what do you mean? Do you mean that you want my morning to be good? Are you telling me that my morning is already good? Do you have some sort of third explanation as to what you're saying? And the response always is, I was just saying good morning. That's what they always say. But absolutely, a person should just say Good Shabbos, and they should really mean it. And you should respond Good Shabbos, and people say Good Shabbos to you. You shouldn't be unhappy, by the way. If you're trying to do a chesed for somebody, and they don't reciprocate back. Today we were learning, the midah of today was not taking pride necessarily in the things that you do. You should, of course, have a tremendous amount of pride, but not looking for honor and glory. Gabriel, right? You shouldn't look for honor and glory. When you do a chesed, the purpose of the chesed should not be to see how much appreciation I can get back from the other person, right? I don't give charity in order for people to praise me. I'm not nice to my friends in order for people to praise me about that. You shouldn't do that type of thing. It's the same thing, by the way, when you say Good Shabbos to a person. You shouldn't be saying Good Shabbos to a person with the expectation that they must say Good Shabbos back to you. Now, they should be doing that, and that's their job. But I just make a recommendation. It causes a great amount of distress to people when they say Good Shabbos, and the person doesn't respond to Good Shabbos. How can you do that? And you get all mad, and a shtickle anti-Semitic, maybe more than a shtickle anti-Semitic. Certain people don't say Good Shabbos, it's not nice, and then you make like a whole broad thing. Oh, it's all the people in whatever neighborhood you live in. My own neighborhood, they would always say Good Shabbos, this place is horrible, or my neighborhood's horrible, this place is better. Whatever it is, it doesn't lead to a happy life when you're constantly looking to be paid back for a nice thing. When you say Good Shabbos to a person, appreciate the fact that you're giving a person a bracha. If they don't respond Good Shabbos back to you, no, they're missing out. It's not very nice. As the Gemara has said, of course, they are taking something away that they should have been granted back to you. No, negate weiter. We move on. Be a nice person. You know how often, I think we know this about me, that I really try to say good morning to everybody. I say good morning. A lot of guys in yeshiva, they don't really respond. Good morning. Now, it's not because Chas v'Shalom they're not sweet. We do have the nicest people of any yeshiva. That's why we're Brooklyn's warmest yeshiva. No, stop. It's absolutely true. I mentioned this the other day. I was talking to my Chashav Rebbetzin, and I said to her, she asked me how the two new kids who came to yeshiva after Pesach, how are they doing? So, So, I said they are totally comfortable. After 2 days, they're already comfortable, and I get a little nervous about that. 2 days already comfortable, they're already comfortable. So my wife said, you say this every time there's a new person in yeshiva. That when guys come to our yeshiva, they get comfortable right away. They get comfortable right away. And it's it's so admirable of the guys in this yeshiva that you go out of your way, you greet people. I mean, look around this room right now without raising your hands, but there's a number of people who came here in the middle of the year. Oh my gosh, what an honor and a privilege. Yeah, a number of people, although there is one aspect of this which is not an honor or privilege, like I'm wondering why the person's in America right now. But on the other hand, it's a great place. It's a great place, so warm, all because of you. But again, it's not unusual. I say good morning, I don't get a good morning back. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It's good to get a good morning. You feel great. But if I don't get it, my day was not conditional on that moment. So thank you. I just want to speak about Chili. Thank you so much for your wonderful good Shabbos. Yashukeh. So, this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is Parshas Behar Bechukosai. In the past, I've spoken about Bechukosai a lot. Bechukosai is a Parsha with a tremendous amount of scariness, a great amount of punishment. Somebody today was asking me, do you get X, Y, Z punishment for X, Y, Z horrible Aveira?
Who was that?
So, a person should learn Parshas Bechukosai and try to internalize some of the ramifications, the consequences that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sets up in the world. Of course, a person should internalize all of the reward and all the positivity that come with a life of Torah, the joy of a life of Torah. I want to share with you just a quick halacha and some thoughts about it. There is a wonderful, interesting mitzvah in this week's parasha. It's the 347th mitzvah in the Torah. And that is the mitzvah, says the Sefer HaChinuch, mitzvahs avodah be'eved Kanani la'olam. It's the mitzvah that an Eved Kanani, a non-Jewish servant, a non-Jewish slave, should be working for you forever. Should be working for you forever. In fact, there's an Aveira. A person is not allowed to free a slave. You're not allowed to free a slave. The pasuk says, "Lo'olam bohem ta'avodu." They should be serving you forever. They should be serving you forever. Isn't that interesting? We all live in the United States post the Civil War, and of course we know how horrible it is to have slaves. Right? In 1863, Abraham Lincoln, he freed the slaves. That's not true, but that's what they say. In 1863, they say that he freed the slaves. He made the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves, which, for anybody who knows history, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't free anyone. It was an illegal act. It was an executive order which had no power. Okay, fine. Eventually, they freed the slaves with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. But we know that the United States is totally anti-slavery. Why is it that we want to never free the slaves? Lo'olam bahem ta'avodu. The Torah says never free the slaves. Good question, Yosef?
Amazing question.
Yeah, I thought so too. Additionally, there's another point. Why not free the slaves? Another point, Mayor, is that aside from the idea that you should never free the slaves, there is another aspect. A non-Jewish slave, an Eved Kanani, when he is freed eventually, you know what happens to him? He becomes a Yid. Gets mitzvahs. He does a tremendous amount in this world. So why in the world shouldn't we free him? It sounds like a great idea. Make the guy a slave. The guy is a slave. He works for whatever amount of years. And at the very end, time to go free. And he's like, wow, gishmak. And he runs to the base medrash. He gets to do Torah and mitzvahs. Why not free the slaves? Good question. You with me? I once read a book. It was called Every Man a Slave, written by Sender Zev. Interesting book. He has a whole historical fiction there about slave in the United States. By the way, yes, Jews had slaves in the United States. They did treat them very, very well. Religious Jews had slaves in the South. If you went to Georgia or South Carolina, you would found that they would have had slaves in the United States. That would not have been an unusual thing. I will tell you though, like I said, they did treat them better than a regular person might treat a slave. How did they treat a slave? For example, maybe I've mentioned this story before. There was a Jewish fellow, a religious person who had a slave, and he used to keep the slave in his house. He used to keep the slave in his house. You listening? You listening? Yeah. He used to keep the slave in his house. Now, in Georgia, it was illegal to house slaves in your house. You're not allowed to keep a slave in your house. A slave must be treated as a second-class citizen. From Yid is not ready to do that. He won't treat a slave like anything less. So the government sued him. He said, you cannot keep your slave in your house. He's very, very wealthy. So he said, fine, I'll remove him. But I need a few months. A few months? Okay, what are you going to do in a few months? I need a few months. What did he do in those few months? He built an exact duplicate of his house, slightly smaller, on a little bit of a smaller scale, because it needs to house less people. And his slave lived in the clone of his house, and he lived in the regular house. You hear this? That's how a Yid had a slave in the United States. That's what slavery was in the United States. But why is it, the Torah says, Lo olam bahem ta'avodu. Why do you have to keep your slaves forever? I think I heard this. I'll tell you the truth, I don't remember this reason that we're about to say. I don't remember. I don't know, I must have learned it at some point, I hope. I don't remember this reason. Says the Sefer HaChinuch. Listen to this reason. No, I'm ready? Yeah. Mitzvah, the root of this mitzvah is why we should never free the slaves. Anti-Abraham Lincoln. The Jewish people, Netanel, are the best people, period. They're the choicest. Number one. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us to be those who recognize our Creator and to serve Him. We need slaves to work for us. Why do we need slaves to work for us? May, you're not listening. We need slaves to work for us. If we don't have a non-Jewish slave to work for us, if we don't have a non-Jewish slave to work for us, you know who's going to have to work for us? A Jewish slave. We need a non-Jewish slave to work for us because we have so much to focus on. We have so much to focus on in our avodas Hashem. And if we had to be busy, working all the time on non-avodas Hashem stuff, we would never be able to be the great people we need to be. If we needed to go work in a restaurant 24/7 to be able to make some money, we wouldn't be able to focus on our aliyah in Torah, in developing ourselves to becoming the massive, special, incredible people we need to be. So that's why we need slaves to do that job for us. And if we didn't have a non-Jewish slave, in the end, we'd hire a Jewish slave. And then what would happen? That Jewish slave wouldn't get the opportunity to center his focus on his avodas Hashem. Listen to this. He says, you should not work your brothers. You should not work your brothers. Why? Because if you end up working your brothers a lot, they're not going to be able to focus on their avodas Hashem. You hear this? Anybody hear what I said? Yes, you heard what I said? It's an aver in the Torah to free your slave. You know why it's an aver in the Torah to free your slave? Because if you free your slave, you know who's going to end up having to work all the time? You are going to have to work all the time. And you are not going to be able to sit and learn. And you are not going to be able to do avodas Hashem. And you are not going to be able to take care of mommy and tati. And you are not going to be able to develop your children into the exceptional people that they need to be. And you are not going to be able to work in your house to make it a makom kadosh. You need to be able to do that type of stuff. I can't be busy with all this stuff all the time. That's why I need a slave. That's why I need a slave. And don't free the slave. Don't free the slave. You want to hear something how powerful the reason for this mitzvah is? There's a story in the Gemara. The Gemara says a story that one of the Tanoim, actually it's right over here. I'll say the story. One of the Tanoim would need to go daven with a minyan. A minyan? And unfortunately, he only had 9 people. So he sent his slave out to go look for Atzenter, and he's outside. Atzenter, and unfortunately, the slave probably couldn't find anybody. So what's he going to do? Now, davening with a minyan is a mitzvah derabanan. Not freeing your slave, the fact that the slave always has to work for you is a mitzvah deraisa. You know what he ended up doing? He freed his slave, and he was able to be the 10th guy in the minyan. So he asked the obvious question, how can you do that? How can you do it? If you could stop doing a mitzvah min Torah in order to do a mitzvah derabanan, how could that be chayim? So you know what he says? You know what the reason you could do that is? You know why? Because the purpose of this mitzvah is that you should be focusing on avodas Hashem. If your slave is getting in the way of your avodas Hashem, your service of God, so then this slave has got to go and not be a slave anymore. You cannot get in the way of your avodas Hashem. Isn't that amazing? You say, oh, you know what? I should do 1,000 different averos in order to be able to do one mitzvah. I should even do one avera, do one mitzvah. No way. This one is the only one like that. We say, don't keep this mitzvah so you can do another mitzvah, because the purpose of this mitzvah is that you should be focused on your avodas Hashem. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? It is literally astonishing. It's literally astonishing. I was learning this last night, and I was thinking about it a lot. And I asked myself a question. I'm curious what you guys would say about this question. I was asking myself this question. I hear a lot from people in yeshiva, already out of yeshiva. They're focused a lot on, I've got to make money. I've got to go make some money. Now, making money could be very admirable. Of course, making money could also be something that is not too admirable. For example, I always say, nowadays I hardly hear it anymore. When I was growing up, everybody wanted to be a lawyer. Nowadays, nobody wants to be a lawyer because it requires going to school. But a person, somebody to talk about, should I be a lawyer, should I be a lawyer? So I used to say that I find it hard to justify it. What do I mean by that? A lawyer, you'll make a lot of money, but to be a good lawyer for the first 10 years, you're working till 2, 3 in the morning. You never get to see your family. You really never get to spend time with your wife. A guy's going to get married and be a lawyer? Like, poor family, poor wife, how can they do that? I think that's very, very difficult. So I said, what do I mean by I can't justify it? A doctor who has similar hours in the first couple of years of being a doctor, I feel like he could justify it because he comes home and when his kids know he's not there, at least the kids know that his daddy's out there saving lives. Like that, maybe you could justify it. But being a lawyer, what are the kids saying? Daddy's out there making money. Well, why is daddy out there making money all this time and hasn't spent time with me until I'm 14 years old? Why has daddy done that? Oh, he's done that so you can have a better life. Well, wouldn't I have a much better life if I got to spend more time with daddy? That is something that I felt difficult to justify. I felt difficult to justify personally, that type of thing. But I have a new question. And it comes down to this. A person is supposed to employ a Eved Kenani, a non-Jewish slave, in order to be able to give him the time he needs to focus on his life. Right? Some people say they have to make money. So a guy says, let's see how old. The guy is 19 years old. He says, I've got to make a lot of money. I'm curious. Let's say he thinks, if I keep working at it for the next 10, 15 years, he'll make what? Let's make believe he'll make $1 million in 15 years. So now he's 19. By the time he's 34, he'll be a millionaire. Okay, sounds good? Gabriel, sounds good? Millionaire by 34. Okay. Let's imagine that. Don't worry about it yet. 34 is a millionaire. I'm just curious. No, I'll ask you. You want to be a millionaire by 34? Would it be the worst thing in the world if it wasn't 34, it was 35? Wouldn't be so bad. 35? Maybe even 38. Would that be the worst thing in the world? A millionaire by 38? Nah. You could be a millionaire by 38. Now the guy reaches millionaire status by 34. He's very excited. I'm a millionaire now at 34. But you could be excited by 38. If you were to look back at yourself, at what you accomplished, you would not be looking back at yourself and saying, oh my gosh, I wish when you're 66 years old, you're not going to be complaining that I had become a millionaire by 38 instead of 34. Anybody disagree with this point? When you are 65 years old, is it going to make a major difference to you that you were a millionaire by 34 instead of 38? I don't think so. You got there. The 4-year difference doesn't make a difference. But I can assure you about one thing. When you're 95 years old and you're not able to enjoy any of that money, will it make a difference to you that you spend 1, 2, 3, 4 years developing the skills to become a masmid, to become an Oved Hashem, to care about life, so that when you're 95 years old, 85 years old, 75 years old, 65 years old, you have an incredible, powerful meaning of life You have given yourself a whole family to create. You have created generations who are Oivdei Hashem and have consistently lived the joy of life. Gedolei Yisrael are the happiest people you'll ever meet. People who are sitting in a base medrash are period the happiest people, whether they're living what we call hand to mouth, that they literally only have the food for today, or whether they're very, very wealthy. The fact that they live meaningful, productive, God-centered, family-centered lives gives them meaning in their life from the age of 17 to the age of 1700 if you get there. But a person, it makes a major difference if you have that 1, 2, 3, 4 years of your life that you're developing at that point. And whether that 1, 2, 3, 4 years is at 18, 19, 20, 21, as my Yeshiva always says, or Yeshiva Rabbi Meiselman always says that the last time to really get it is 18 to 21. If a person decides to go learn in Eretz Yisrael, or a person decides to dedicate his life to Torah, wherever it is, if a person has that time now, then it'll make a difference. Because I can assure you, if at the age of 65, a person looks at himself and he says that now, my knees, they don't work as well as they used to. It's hard for me to get up. I'm not exactly going to slide down the slides anymore, and I'm not jumping by a Lag BaOmer party anymore at that point. I'm not doing that anymore. So what is it that's filling my life with joy? Will it make a difference to me now, Noam, if I ever got the chance to appreciate the ability to learn Torah, the ability to have a joy in my life that is not connected to the financial success of me? I think it would. I think if you look back at your life, 34 to 38, like Noam told me, it doesn't really make a difference if I became a millionaire or a billionaire or a trillionaire between the ages of 34 and 38. But if I used 4 years of my life, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, 10 years of your life, whatever you want to do, that time is never going to come back. There's always time to make $1 million. I can tell you with absolute certainty. I know a lot of people who made a lot of millions of dollars. And these guys had no money until they were 30, and then they went out and they made some money. They made a lot of money. They made a lot of money. But the fact that they started 4 years earlier meant nothing. It changed zero in their life. 34 to 38, and that's true too. 100%, like Noam says, you have the Hashgacha, the Eibusha, Hashem will give it to you whenever He's ready to give it to you. But at the age of 34 to 38, it made no difference. It makes no difference. I used to say, a person's going to go work right now. You want to go work when you're 17, 18, 19 years old. You want to go work. Why are you rushing in to the most boring part of your life? That's what I used to always say. I'm very fortunate that my avodah, my work that I do is tremendously meaningful, and I live the greatest possible life because I get to, that this is my job. I get to do this. 100%. 100%. But if a person had the type of job that it's just going in, checking out, making a lot of money, accounting, real estate, whatever it is that a person's doing, it's the most boring part of a person's life. And the fact, whether it happens now or it happens later, who cares? Those 4 years won't make a difference to you. You want to be a billionaire?
Yeah.
Yeah? Why?
No. Because then I have generational wealth.
Why do you need generational wealth? You don't think your kids are smart enough to do it on their own? Okay, that was quick. So a person needs to be able to try to find the focus in their life. If a person is constantly busy, you'll never have the chance to be an Oved Hashem. I want to mention, it's interesting, I was sitting with guys at the breakfast this morning. It was an interesting point, and there are two things this week that really struck me. It's small, tiny things, but it really did bother me, and it's not like any others, but it did bother me. One thing that bothered me, I spoke to my class for a lot about it, is how rare it is nowadays for people to have hobbies. And I was thinking about it, that people say they're bored. I'm bored. I have nothing to do. If I'm not on my phone, I'm bored. Get a hobby. Do something with your life. I don't remember ever being bored, personally. I remember doing things that I found boring. But just being bored, like I had nothing to do, I don't remember that, personally. Maybe there was a time when I was bored. I'm never bored. But the other thing that bothered me is this morning, speaking of boredom, this morning the guys by breakfast were talking about listening to music while taking a shower. I'll tell you the truth, it's interesting. I think that's like the worst. Not the worst like anti-Semitism. But it doesn't sound so great. Why do I think it's not so great? And I'll finish with this. Why do I think it's not so great? In a good frum Jew's life, there's 2 times he gets to think with clarity, without time being interrupted, with me just having time to think. What are those 2 times you get to think as a good frum Jew? Shower and... No, a good frum Jew. I had the frum part. Good frum Jew. No. When does he get to think? In the middle Shemona Esrei, thank you very much. Wow. Exactly right. A good frum Jew is only able to think at 2 good times. Shemona Esrei and the shower. Now, if anybody comes up with a good idea, now if the guy's always listening to music in the shower, he's never thinking. So he's only going to say it came up during Shemona Esrei. I only thought about it during Shemona Esrei. But being honest, the reason why it bothers me is in the shower, it's a time to collect your thoughts. Whether it's a quick shower or a long shower, it's a time to collect your thoughts. It's more of a rampant problem, like a running towards distractions. The goal of having this slave to work for you is that you don't need to be distracted. There's a lot for you to do. You've got a lot to do. You have a very productive and constructive life that only you, Noam, can produce. No one can produce the life that you could produce. No one could produce. If you ask about the Shabbos table, I heard there's a mitzvah in the Torah. Mitzvah in the Torah, you're not allowed to free the slaves. Rabbi Zakheim said Abraham Lincoln was a terrible, horrible loser of a guy. I never said that, chas v'shalom. Even if he was, I never said that. But why are you not allowed to free the slaves? Why are you not allowed to free the slaves? You're going to be busy. Exactly right. Don't be busy with the bad things. Be busy with the Avodas Hashem tzvi. You should have a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos. Everyone should have Shabbos. Food.